Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Welcome to today's upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click that like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump in to today's upload, shall we? Today's first and only Montana subscriber submission. Hey Jeff, I hope this email finds you and your family in good spirits. Okay, well, I'm going to try to explain this as best as I can. My first encounter ever was when he awoke me out of a dead sleep looking down at me. Once I opened my eyes, there was a few minutes. He didn't know how I was going to act, so he gave me a look that said it all. If you scream, I will come in and tear you apart, and there is nothing you can do about it. I pulled the sleeping bag over my face and started to whisper for my cuz, Hoyt. I got his attention, although his back was facing the window and me. I told him there was a werewolf looking at me, and for him to stand up fast before it leaves. Hoyt then just said, turn over and go back to sleep. If you don't bother it, it won't bother you. Although, that isn't what I did. As I looked up back at him, with his self-luminous yellowish-green eyes, I saw a human intelligence in those eyes, and I saw exactly where I stood in the food chain. After some time, I needed to sit up Indian style, and we just looked at each other, although I could not tell how long. This was in the early 90s when we moved up there, so I was going in 5th grade and it was summer. Over time, he would come around the house, peeking in the windows. He was around 8 to 9 feet tall. He would stick his hands over the 2nd-story banister, and his eyes would be from the floor of the 2nd-floor story deck in the bottom 2x4, if that makes sense. And he could see into the living room upstairs. Or we would be playing a game downstairs, and Coleman would see him in the reflection of the TV and run into his room screaming, it's here, it's here. Over time, this Dogman and I would stay up at night and just talk with each other without talking, if that makes sense, because we always had the window between us. Over time, I could feel where he was without seeing him. Although there was always this predatory sense about him, for the most part, I would not feel threatened by him. Yet there was times I would feel like the presence was stronger for some reason. And I remember one time I was running around a gravel circle we had outside of the property that I would run. I felt him up to the left of me, and I got a sense that I needed to get my ass back home as fast as I could, so I did. I would go back up slowly, out my head down till I got to the gate, then halt into the crib. There was this one time we were all coming out from the little room. It was my Uncle Beebe, me, Holt, Coleman, Tess, my aunt, my mom, and Andrew, and Angie. My uncle stopped, bent down, with his arms outstretched, preventing me from crossing. Immediately I knew it was him. And I knew where he was, although I could not see him from where I was. Now, I know my uncle would not do this for a grizzly or a puma, plus his guns were to the right of us, not even 5 feet away. My uncle said, "Don't move, don't breathe, don't blink." Yet, the moment my uncle raised back up, I ran into the kitchen window and started knocking on the window as he was walking up the hill by the side of the house. As I knocked and waved, he just kind of gave me this sideways glance from his eyes and continued up the hill. I remember his arms almost hitting the ground, so they were long. He had a tail that curled up a little, and he looked like a gray wolf with a white and black face. My uncle and aunt started telling me, and Beebe took me from the window and asked what I thought I was doing. I simply told him I was waving to my wolf friend and that we would talk at night when he would come around. You should have saw the look on their faces. Anyway, there was a time I was coming out from upstairs and I saw him looking in. I started running up to him to jump on the couch and say hi. I stopped midway and had his eyes squinted. He just gave me this look, so I slid down the stairs on my side because he was on the other side of the wall. As I came down the stairs living room, my two cousins, Hoyt and Coleman, were downstairs. Well, we started to get into it, and Hoyt pinned me against the wall. They started calling me city slicker like they did. So I started whimpering and whining like a dog. As Coleman was starting to come my way, he slapped the side of the house to the point that it shook the pictures of the wall, and they got startled. Then I saw him peek around and smile at me. Then Coleman saw him first, out of them two, and ran into his room screaming like he did, saying, "It's here." Then Hoyt turned around and he just looked at him, and Hoyt took off to his room. I started walking up to him, and we were just looking at each other. I waved like I usually did. Then I took off to my room, because I got scared he would come in, although he never tried to come in the house. When I had to go and clean the chicken coop and gather eggs for breakfast, I would feel him, but never see him. He never hurt or took any of the chickens, or hurt the duck they had, or the dog they had. I remember we would mimic each other for what seemed like hours. Well, he would follow me off the 9 mile into Koi campground. For some reason, I got more scared because it was just Mom and I at that point. He never hurt any of the animals at the petting zoo there, or any of the cows behind the house. I remember him grabbing my leg one night through the window when we lived in a trailer and the windows went out from the bottom to the top. It scared me badly. I jumped out of bed in flight, yet I remember a cold padded touch of his hand. Like I said, I don't remember what I had done for my brain to suppress these encounters. My family also had Bigfoot encounters. That got so bad they stuck all of us kids in the basement with 2 armed adults. Chase this Bigfoot was on the roof and snatched one of the wiffle ball bats out of my cousin's hand. I remember the 3 of them came back in the middle, and he ended up soiling himself. I tried to get them to talk about it, but they wouldn't. So I went out, and the 2 neighborhood German Shepherds were going ape crap, trying to get to the woodline. I remember walking halfway to the woodline, and I could still hear the dog's teeth gnashing closed. When I got about halfway there, I heard 2 wood knocks and 3 whoops with the loudest roar I'd ever heard. It tickled my nose and shook my organs, so I ran back inside. The next day, my cousin said Hoyt, Coleman, and me to come down. Said, "Boys, there are things out in this world that need to be left alone, feared, and most of all respected." To this day, they refuse to talk about it. I had to trick my aunt up once just to admit that I knocked on the kitchen window and waved to my wolf friend. That's about it, Jeff. I hope this helps. Today's second subscriber, Dogman encounter, but first and only Nebraskan Dogman subscriber encounter. Hey Jeff, a friend of mine got me into listening to your videos. I have no idea exactly what I saw that night, but I could only place it as a true lycanthrope. It was in Nebraska of 2008. I was up rather late, like usual, because I've never been a daytime sort of person. I was doing the dishes when I noticed something move through the window in front of me. So I looked up curious, since we live about 15 miles out of town, so there shouldn't have really been anything to draw my attention to the window. There was a yard light in my yard right next to the lilac bush and our natural gas tank. My heart skipped a beat at what I had saw. Standing beneath the yard light, as if begging for me to notice it, was a huge black figure, one that I hadn't seen before except in movies. Standing on its two wolf-like legs, it had to have been a good 6 to 7 feet tall. His breathing, I couldn't tear my eyes away as I stood there motionless, transfixed on a pair of eyes over his wolf-like nose. I have no idea how long we stood there staring at each other, but it had almost felt like an eternity. I've heard I should have been afraid, but I was more curious than anything. I had become so drawn into what I was seeing, I ended up dropping the glass I had in my hands, taking my attention away from my nighttime visitor. I looked down at the mess I had just made for a mere second before looking back out. The creature was nowhere to be seen. So, with my heart hammering in my chest, I made my way for the front door, and then I stepped outside. Once my feet moved over the threshold of my door, I moved slowly toward my front yard, my eyes darting all over the darkened landscape. But even as I stood beneath the light, where he had been, there was nothing but trees rustling gently in the breeze, the branches of the lilac bush swaying slightly, the crunch of the gravel beneath my feet. The creature was gone. I began to think I had spaced off and only thought that I had seen it, till the next day when I had awoken and heard my brother and his wife talking in the dining room. They were telling my parents about a creature they had seen running across the highway on their way home the night before. They doubted what they had seen until they realized they had seen the same thing, but did not dare to stop to try and get a better look at this lichen-like creature they had nearly hit. I couldn't believe it. Deep down I was excited that I really had seen it, and I had not hallucinated, or daydreamed, or whatever. So I couldn't help but tell them that I had seen it as well. The lycanthrope has not been seen since that night in or around my yard, but I can't bring myself to wonder if he is still out there lingering in the darkness and out of sight. Being older now, I have a newfound respect as to what could have happened to me that night, and how crazy I was to go outside and search for him like that. But it also leaves me to wonder, what drove him off? What made him run away like that? A question I will never probably find the answer to, but I still continue to stop by the windows and look outside and wonder. I really hope I said at the beginning of all that, Nebraska, our one and only Nebraskan. I think I did. But anyway, that finishes Nebraska up. Now we jump into Nevada. Today's first Nevada Dogman subscriber encounter. This happened back in the 90s, the late 90s. I had just retired from the United States Army, where I served for 21 years. I had been involved in both Vietnam and Desert Storm. The only reason I bring that up because what happened is not the actions of a balanced man. At the time, freshly out of combat, I was not exactly balanced. I had met a girl, well, actually a woman, that I had liked quite a bit. We had gone for a ride to a park just north of Omaha. This park was said to have supernatural entities roaming around the park, especially at night. Well, needless to say, we didn't believe in that, so we drove out there one night just to get away and be alone for a while. We parked in a lookout, a beautiful view. After a bit, she had to tinkle. Well, me being a gentleman, I moved to the other side of the car to let her do her business. All of a sudden, she lets out this muffled yelp. I immediately knew something was wrong. You need to know that since I got back home, I went nowhere unarmed. I always had my .45 auto and either a Bowie knife or a machete. This night I had a machete. I quickly moved where she was and saw her face. It was a face of fear and panic. I turned to see what she was looking at and got the shock of my life. There, 25 feet, was a dog standing on two legs. It was hunched, and its front legs were almost touching the ground. I'm 6 foot, and this thing was at least my height hunched over. God knows how tall it was standing straight up. I instinctively moved between her and it. I drew my pistol and a machete and stood there. There was no running. It had us cornered. Jeff, this damn thing smiled at me. It was a pure evil, intimidating type of smile. For the first time in a long time, I was frightened. Then my training kicked in. I smiled back with the most evil, intimidating smile I could muster, at the same time raising my .45 and scraping the machete along the ground. As I took a step towards it, it barked and bolted to my left, followed by two more that neither one of us had seen. Needless to say, we got out of there in a hurry. Sad thing about this is I never saw that girl again. It was too bad because I really liked her. Today's second Nevada subscriber Dogman encounter. So, Jeff, here is my encounter. It happened in Churchill County, which is a rural farming ranching county in northern Nevada, about 60 miles east of Reno. It was late October 2010. I was 19 at the time, and my girlfriend and I were driving out into the desert for some private time. You know, typical teenage activities, aside for the fact that neither of us drank or did drugs. It was about 9 p.m. at night, and it was pretty dark out. I was driving my first car, which was a 97 Geo Metro. If you don't know how small these things are, they are an economy two-door car that are pretty low to the ground. We were driving along Casey Road, which runs parallel along a very large canal. It's at least 15 feet across and pretty deep. It is one of the main canals that brings water into the county for irrigation. Along the canal, there are large sagebrush and other foliage growing. Anyway, Casey Road turns into a dirt road, and if you follow it all the way down, there is a splitway called 26-foot drop. Our plan was to head to the spillway and hang out for a while. So we're driving along. It's really dark out. My lights are just picking up what is in front of the car when my girlfriend and I both see something ahead of us. Neither of us say anything, but I'm coming up on it. It was a very large black animal, and immediately my first thought was cow. As I've almost hit 2 cows in my car months prior, in a lot of rural area in Nevada, the cows are free range, so you have to be careful not to hit them. Anyway, this creature is about the size of a small cow. So, as we are getting closer and start to roll on this thing, we see it in better detail. The creature is on the passenger side of my car. The front half of this animal was in the brush facing the bank of the canal, so all we could see is the rear end of the animal sticking out of the sagebrush, while its front half is obscured. I remember my lights hitting it and seeing its fur. It was dark black, it was shaggy, and I could tell the fur had length to it. My lights kind of gleamed on the fur. I remember it being unusually dark colored, and it was darker than the night around us. While looking at the fur, I saw that it had a black bushy tail, so now I'm thinking dog. But as my car is getting closer and closer to this thing, its true size dawns on me. At the same moment, my girlfriend starts leaning herself into the driver's side of my car to put some distance between herself and the passenger side window. As my car rolls next to the creature, neither of us are saying anything as we are both kind of stupefied and shocked, but she's clearly scared as she's trying to lean into my seat. My car is inching closer to the creature, and I see typical dog legs, a dog tail, the whole rear end of a dog, but bigger and thicker than a normal dog. My car eventually lines up with the animal's hindquarters, and I can see the rear end of this creature is above my passenger mirror. Now, Jeff, the rear end of the creature was big. I know my car is low to the ground, but this animal was 3 to 4 feet at its hip. At that point, my girlfriend is practically in my seat, and I'm hitting the gas. Neither of us ever saw the front of the creature, but what we saw was enough to scare us both. Needless to say, we did not end up staying on that road. We immediately left. Recently, I got in contact with her again and asked her if she remembered about that night. This is her response. I remember only seeing the back end of it and grabbing your arm while my heart stopped. It was so dark, I don't remember seeing anything in the mirror, or even when we backed up. It was just gone. It comes back to me every once in a while. I think it was the first time I had ever been afraid like that. All I remember is we were talking, and all of a sudden I looked to my left and saw this big black thing in between the tall grass going into the canal. It was huge with a large tail. I remember also you didn't want to back up. I know that whatever it was, it had to have been pretty scary to shake her up like this. She's a tough girl, about 5'10". She was taking boxing classes while we were together. She also lived a pretty rough life, with a part of her early teenage years being spent homeless on the streets of Las Vegas. So I know it had to have been pretty scary for her to remember this creature after all these years. In more recent years, I became close friends with two Native Americans from the local tribe. They both have told me separate stories of their family members encountering what they call skinwalkers on tribal land south of Churchill County in Schwartz, Nevada. They both have only given me a vague overview of the encounters, but I would like to one day get them in full and share them with you. At this point, you can share what I wrote above on your show if you'd like. I'm going to keep rambling down below, so feel free to share it all. My encounters and my friend's family encounters all took place roughly an hour to an hour and a half away from the encounter listed on Vicundus Dogman Encounters website. You can read it up there. It's listed as Mineral County Encounter. I also found other Nevada Dogman encounters through Dogman Facebook groups I'm part of, which took place on Highway 95, just like Mineral County Encounter. I also recently found another Skinwalker encounter on Mineral County from another podcast. I do believe these things are out here, and Nevada is so rural and vast they could live undetected. 84% of the state is owned by the government, so it's pretty much empty, high elevation desert and mountain ranges. I know what I saw was not a normal dog, nor a coyote or a wolf. We don't have any in this area. Sometimes at night I get chills as I'm still living in a rural area about 2 miles away from my encounter. Maybe it's just all the research and encounters I've read in the following years. I may be crazy, but a part of me wishes I would have stopped my car for a bit instead of driving off, just to get a better look at the creature. Another part of me is glad that I did not see the creature's face after what so many eyewitnesses say it's like. Sometimes I stand by my old car and trip myself realizing that all that stood between me and whatever this creature was a small tin can of a car. Anyway, thank you for listening, Jeff. Please keep up your podcast. I listen religiously. In fact, my current girlfriend and I would like to listen to your show together. Tonight's final Nevada encounter and final encounter of the evening or day. Hey Jeff, I've been listening to your channel for a few months now. I like your honesty. I'll be 54 in July. I'm not well. I had heart surgery in 2008, lifelong diabetic since I was 12 years old. I live with my daughter. We have a small ranch with a couple of horses, many chickens, and we raise border collies. I did try to contact you with Facebook with no success, but no worries. I know you're busy. Actually, I don't use Facebook, guys. I know I have a Facebook, but I don't use it. I hate Facebook. I just email me, please. I don't even go to messaging on Facebook. So please, guys, email me if you want to get in touch. Anyway, back to this. The first time I had seen a vampire was in August of 2000. I lived in Las Vegas on the west side, not a good neighborhood, but I raised pit bulls, so I felt somewhat safe. At the time, I was researching vampires on the web, talked to a few so-called, not that I really believed they were. I think it was a Sunday night, August 6, 2000. I had my niece and nephew spending the night with my daughters. My oldest was about 13, I believe. Her cousin was 13 or 14, somewhere in there. My youngest was asleep on the couch. She was a baby, about 4 years old. My husband at the time was asleep in the bedroom. Me and the kids were up watching TV. I heard a noise on the front porch. My porch was upstairs with a locked gate, too high to get over because you had to stand on the first step to open it. But it was locked, so I went and looked out the door peephole, and there were 3 guys standing there, 2 in long black dusters, one more army style with a shaved head. He was a large guy. The other 2, one had long black hair and was a really nice looking guy. The third I thought I knew from speaking with him online, but he was from Rochester, New York. He had medium length curly hair, probably 5'10". The other, maybe 6 foot. The big guy was well over 6 foot. I'm like 5'3", so he looked big. One of them motioned to me to come outside. No way was I going out there. Something was not right. I did not go out there until sunrise when they left. Then others started showing up, mostly wearing dusters. Here's the thing, they were jumping from my porch going straight up. I think the original 3 were protecting us. I had this all written down, but my ex-husband threw it away. They stayed until morning. Also, I had my niece and nephew look on the porch without telling her anything. I wanted to see what she saw. She said I saw 2 guys with long coats, one army jacket. So many were coming and going, I had no idea what they wanted. I know this sounds nuts, but it happened. Another came back to the apartment later that year, another story. He was different from the original 3. He had long, dirty blonde hair and wore a leather vest biker looking, very threatening. He stayed downstairs. Also, my neighbor put garlic on my stairs, then moved away. They must have seen them too. I've seen them a total of 5 times. I wish I could remember more. I just know we were scared and it was a long night. I've had other things happen to me. All of my life it's been happening. I don't know why it does. I've not told anybody about this vampire thing because it's too unbelievable. I don't want anything or to be on your show. At the time, I lived on Illinois Street in Las Vegas. Last time I seen 2. One was a woman. It was around 2014. I lived next to the Hard Rock Casino. Her and her guy followed me right up to my apartment door. I just happened to notice them following me when I was taking my dog out at night. I started running back to the apartment. I knew what they were. She looked right into the door peephole, then they were gone. Just they have this way about them, it's hard to explain. It's almost purposeful. I know how this sounds, believe me, but it happened. I also heard howling at my home here in Pahrump, Nevada, like people mimicking coyotes. No people around, though. And I would have seen 10 or more people. My neighbor called me. He was scared and asked what was going on out there. I told him coyotes. He said, no, it sounds like a lot of people. And I knew he was right, because I did too. I took my Kimber 9mm and started down the driveway. I seen nothing, no people around. It was coming from my northeast corner, where Paul, my neighbor's fence met mine. My dogs wouldn't come out. Now they chase coyotes off. I shot a coyote after my dog chased it out. It was huge, dark gray, bigger than my collies. It killed a bunch of my hens and left them ripped apart. But I've never heard coyotes sound like that. And my dogs were quite not normal. Paul's an old man. He wouldn't go outside. He was scared. I got scared in the driveway when I couldn't see anything, so I came back into the house. I don't know what that was. I think it was 2019 when that happened. Sometime in fall. It was dark and early. I have never heard it again, but I do hear and see coyotes around. I put up a hot wire, a 12K volt, to keep them out. Pahrump is a strange place. Strange things happen here. I used to live down the road from Art Bell's place, but I live on the other side of Pahrump now, towards California. All right, folks, a slew of just absolutely terrifying experiences. I hope that you enjoyed them as much as I enjoyed sharing them with you. Guys, I'd also like to thank you for supporting the channel. It is your support, after all, that helps this channel to continue to grow and go. And honestly, what gives people a place to share their experiences, ideas, and theories, judgment and ridicule free, just simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Thank you. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant. Keeping an eye on our children, the most precious gift we could be given. Our pets, the greatest alarm system we could ever have. Friends and family, the people that we care about. Share this information with the people that we care and love, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.